cakes, but just a little. Just a little bit. Okay. The Lord be with you. We now start our tributes for Mr. Lawrence Dopwell, the patriarch of the St. George's Cathedral, our oldest member, who has served so faithfully and well. So our first tribute will be by his son, Ferran Randy Dopwell, son.
Thanks, Jen. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Good afternoon. Yeah, we're here to celebrate the life of Sir Lawrence. Yeah, my dad, Lawrence Dopwell, Daddy, Doppy. Doppy was a good, honest, and hard-working man. Yeah, waiting for Skakes to get me the sound right. All right. Yeah, Daddy was a good, hard-working man. Let's take this into his career. He was a postman, but he never looked at being a postman as a job. It was a profession. He loved being a postman. He could have been a tailor. His father was a tailor, and he grew up being a tailor. He could have been a tailor. But he had a family, and he decided that it was important to have a job that could take care of his family. So he was a postman. And he worked his way right up to the top, and after there was no top, they had to create a position for him, Inspector of Post. That's to tell you about my dad. He gave me a job for a Christmas. Yeah, I worked with him in the post office. And after the first day, when I got home, he says, come, let's sit in the room. And he says to me, let me explain to you what this postal business is all about. So after he explained to me, I knew what he had said to me. Tomorrow when you get in on the job, you got to work harder. That was the kind of dad that he was. He was a professional. Sports enthusiast, sports personality. I'm going through a book right now by Just Edwards, the memoirs of Just Edwards by his daughter. And in that book, he's talking about sports in the early days. And coming out of the Anglican school, there were 3 top athletes: Fitzroy Dopwell, Alvin Dopwell, and Lawrence Dopwell. That's to tell you the kind of personality. If you look at his bow legs and you look at my bow legs, you would know that he was a good soccer player. They said to me he played for the government team. Don't know who was the government team, but it seems like everybody on the team worked for the government, so it became the government team. I got to tell you about the bicycle, because postmen in those days, they moved around with bicycles, dropping off mails here and there. And sometimes when they get back to the post office, it's closed, so they bring home the bicycle. So my father would say to me early in the morning, you have to take the bicycle back to the post office. And my friends in the area were so glad to see when he is taking home the bike in the evening, because they are up early in the morning to see me walking the bicycle. He says, Guy, this is the government bike, don't ride it. So I had to walk the bicycle back to the place. Sir Lawrence had a great sense of humor. Great guy. Be happy to sit and chat with him. I think the highlights of his careers in sports is when he went to do pole vaulting. And there were some big names like Nubby Baines and these guys who were pole vaulters. And he just won. And they never had another pole vault competition after that because he won. So, Sir Lawrence made a great contribution, took care of his family, and I'm happy to be here as part of that family, the Dopwell family, to say, let's celebrate his life. Let's enjoy today. Thank you, everybody.
Our second tribute would be by Gamal Dopwell, grandson of our patriarch.
Okay. Pleasant good afternoon to all. So I have the privilege to give some insight on a great man through the eyes of his grandchildren. And to be quite honest, I'm not exactly sure if, I've earned this honor, because I'm not the eldest grandchild, and the old man wasn't one to play favorites. So that claim goes out the window. I probably lived with them the longest, but that's more out of necessity than a choice. Nevertheless, many narratives will be told today, but Lawrence Dopwell was a proud, hard-working individual, a man of values who was passionate about everything that he did, and sometimes equally as stubborn. What I'd like to do is share a few stories of who he was and how he impacted our lives. He simultaneously served as an example of who we should be and who we shouldn't be. A man from humble beginnings, he toiled incessantly to provide for his family. He tells us stories of what he had to do and endure just so his family could eat. In that same breath, he tells us that we don't need to do it like him, we just need to value education and productivity to make our way in this world and make it a better place. On the weekends and school vacations, it was common for everybody to flock to the family home. He found ways to keep us occupied when he wasn't yelling at us to pick up a book. Trimming the yard, cooking, cleaning, and painting were amongst the chores that we had to do. Many times we'd rather do anything but those, but it's usually led to a conversation about, so who do you really think is in charge? Just so you know, we would lose. I remember that one summer, while I was still in prep school, my cousins Jabari, Adrian, and Jadiel once told him that we had lessons over at prep school, and we used that time to go and play cricket over by the pasture. What we failed to realize is that from our porch, he had a direct sight to who was on the pasture. So little did we know, he was taking full and eyeful of what we were actually engaging in. After that, we went and we raided somebody's mango tree. And you have four Nashi boys who were there with pockets full of mangoes coming in well after the lunch hour. With poor concept of time, you got back home to meeting a very irate granddad. I don't think I need to explain to you what happened after that. But his message is actually clear. You don't take a big man for fool. If you're going to go and study, please take it seriously. Whenever we thought he was being unreasonable, we'd go to the one person who would actually make it better, Granny. Which is ironic because he gets to lay down with her for the rest of his life once more. We'd usually get the speech on how we needed to behave and how we'll be fine. And then we'd also go and tell our parents that he never wanted us having any fun. And their response was, oh, you guys have no idea how good you have it now. He did find his ways to bond with us though, through sports and through church. Cricket used to be his favorite, as we'd congregate in the living room and watch test matches with glee. It made it all the more confusing when he would discipline us when we ran off to actually play cricket. It's very odd, but he was a man firmly planted in his faith. He never missed a Sunday service, and when he stepped out, he was always dressed to impress. One Christmas season, as I waited for a ride home with him, he was stopped by a lady in the choir who complimented him on his dapper appearance. When she walked up to him and said, "Mr. Dopwell, you're always so well dressed." So young and impressionable, I wanted that kind of compliment as well. I used some of the Christmas money I had, and I bought one of those men's fellowship shirts, you know, the ones with the 4 pockets? And I thought that was going to be the hottest thing in church next Sunday. As I read to myself that next Sunday, I walked downstairs and he stared at me and said, all right, let's go. I'm walking down to church and I'm grinning, expecting those same compliments. And as we make our way into this very churchyard, not a mere 2 steps in, I hear somebody from behind the bushes, oh gosh, why can't that old man short there? I was beyond shamed. The funny part about it was, he stood next to me and started laughing. And the funny part is, he would always tell us that church is not the place for skinning and grinning. Seems ironic. What we really wanted to do is kind of test how he took everything seriously. He was always dressed in true casket-sharp form. The message was clear that day. You can try to imitate me, but there will only be one. My final story pertains to how he was greeted, Doppy. If I could count the amount of times I've heard him called Lawrence, I guarantee it wouldn't exceed 5. To family, to friends, and strangers, he was always Doppy. So I once walked up the corridor to say, Granddad, so if a group of us are walking downtown and somebody say, hey Doppy, who's supposed to turn around? His response remained true to form. They're talking about me. Nobody knows you a Dopwell. If it wasn't for me. What I will say today is that you made being a Dopwell the best experience ever. So today, we celebrate you. Our team captain, star batsman, one of the best teachers that we ever had in life. Selfishly, I wish you would have went for your 100. But if 95 has to be the high mark in family, it's only right that you have it. From eternal love and gratitude, the Dopwell family.
Our next tribute is by Mr. Renwick Rose, his nephew.
Sisters and brothers, good afternoon to you all. Normally in making a little address like this, I really like to ad-lib. But Uncle Doppy was so straight and so meticulous that it's almost like I see him looking over my shoulder and afraid to ad-lib in case I leave out anything. So I had to write the tribute to Uncle Doppy. It is with much sadness and grief that I stand before you to pay my respect to the deceased Lawrence Dopwell, affectionately known to us as Uncle Doppy. My mother, Germaine, his sister, predeceased him by just over 1 year, and the memories of her loss is very much etched in my mind. As siblings, they both had enjoyed close relationship and were supportive of each other. That relationship extended to their respective families. As a result, I grew up loving and respecting my uncle and knowing that he always had my back. I respected my uncle for some of the qualities he possessed and the values he had imparted to his family and relatives. He was an honest, committed, and hard-working individual, as you heard the speakers before me say, who never mixed duty with pleasure. In fact, I would say the only thing that was bent about him was his feet. He was a very, very straight man. Everyone knows Uncle Doppy as a disciplinarian, and therefore you knew that when you are in his presence, you must be on your best behavior, because he was known as the no-nonsense person. Dove, you could testify to that? He was a devoted father to all his children and ensured what little resources he had acquired went towards meeting their needs. He worked for, as long as I can remember, as a postman at the General Post Office, and was very committed and dedicated to his work. Upon his retirement from the post of senior postman, he left an indelible record for others to emulate. I don't know if anybody else has been able to match up to that. In fact, I remember in those days before we had barrels and so on coming, people used to get parcels, and very often the parcels would come by boat. I remember Christmas Day, Boxing Day, and you hear one of the boats sagging a boat in the bay, and he would leave off whatever Christmas celebrations to ensure that he went to clear the mails so that people could get whatever their family had sent for them. That was the kind of person he was. Uncle Duppy had loved his church, and as a staunch member of the Anglican community, had dedicated much of his time in serving the Lord. He was one of its pillars in his devotion to Anglicanism and its guiding principles. He was a stickler in his faith, so much so that during the period of Lent, he faithfully practiced abstinence in line with Christian beliefs. Not many other Christians used to do that. This was a testimony of his self-discipline and deep devotion to his beliefs. When I entered the political fray many moons ago, he was one of my staunchest supporters and had always encouraged me in my pursuits. In fact, I recall in 1979 when we got involved in electoral politics, and we launched at the time, the United People's Movement in the Market Square. My father didn't go. And I remember him coming over Stony Ground and saying, "Rose, what kind of man are you? Your son involved in this thing and you didn't." That was the kind of person he was. He has departed this life to join his parents, siblings, and relatives, and have left this life to a higher realm. Sleep on, Uncle Duppy, until we meet again. Thanks for listening.
We now have a tribute from the members of the Men's Fellowship, of which Mr. Dopwell was a member. Men's Fellowship, please come forward. We now have a tribute from the Breakaway Masters Football Club, and this will be done by his son, Leopold Dopwell. Give me your name. This will be done by Camelo Samuel.
Good afternoon. So just for clarification, Mr. Leopold Dopwell is the younger chap over there, and I am Camelo Samuel. And when I learned of the passing, Mr. Leopold Dopwell, he is our president of the Breakaway Masters Football Club. And when I learned of his passing, I visited him immediately, and I asked him, what are we going to do as an organization, because it's most deserving. And when he spoke about the tribute, I gave him no option. He's our president, but that one I took upon myself to present for the Breakaway Masters organization to Mr. Lawrence. By all accounts that has gone before me and those to come, we would all agree that Mr. Lawrence was a family man, a sportsman, and a dedicated man to church. He was also a man that took a keen interest in the development of his children and those around him. However, I myself cannot truly attest to these things, as I am way past his junior. I'm too young for that. But what I want to talk about briefly is his legacy. And when I say his legacy, I want to speak about his children. I would have been honored to come in contact with two of them more than the rest. And I want to speak first about the first one I came in contact with. I don't know if she will remember me, but Rosie, I was then a young little boy from the boys' grammar school doing my SBA, and I went to the marketing board. She aided me greatly, and my final passing grade was a 48 out of 50. I do believe I lost 2 marks because of my handwriting, because they say when you're good with numbers, you're not so good in writing. I don't think I ever got the chance to thank you, but on behalf of your father, thank you very much. You have contributed into molding a very good, successful young man, and as far as I've reached in my early years, I want to thank you again. The second person I want to speak about, his son, Leopold Dopwell. He has been more than my mentor. He has been there to guide me and to guide others and to guide Breakaway Masters to successful achievements. As of last year, we have been nominated to be the best sports club of St. Vincent and the Grenadines for 2018, 2019, and more to come. This is just a small testament of what the Dopwells can produce. I know I don't have that title, but what I do have is that guidance, and I would only hope and continue to pray to God that it continues to be that way. In closing, there's something that we always say to our president. Whenever we speak about him, we always say, he is our president for life. Today is a testament of what life can yield, life can be, and how life can end. But what we can never forget is the memories, the lessons, the teachings, the discipline that were bestowed upon us for us to carry on. So in closing, as we always say, in Breakaway Masters organization, we are glad to have you.
We now have a tribute in song by Mr. Robert Patches Knight.
This world is not my home. Says it's all laid up, so
we now have a tribute which was written by Nina Maloney, and it would be read by Siebert of Liverpool, his son.
Good afternoon, church. Before I start reading the eulogy, I would like to take this opportunity to thank everyone who present here today and who have sent greetings, cards, telephone, etc. to our family. We greatly appreciate it, and we're going to use this opportunity to thank you. Thank you again. This tribute to my dear friend and colleague, Lawrence Dopwell. To speak of Dopwell, what I know of him will go very much into his eulogy. So I would just tell you, as a postal worker extraordinary, Lawrence Dopwell was the backbone of the postal service in 1950s, 60s, and 70s. What a man he was. He served faithfully and well. As the senior postman and supervisor of the postmen in SVG, he was courteous, kind, and went beyond the calling of duties to impart his knowledge and to help them all. He served under 6 postmaster generals, namely Mrs. Moulton Williams, Mark Velox, Eustace Hanaway, Medford Scott, O.G. Galloway, and Beryl Richards,
Could I make a suggestion?
all of blessed memory. Office Superintendent, Mistress May Monroe Parks, and Permanent Secretary, Barney Jacobs, also of blessed memory.
I just tell me you need to get the fridge in there.
Doppy was known locally, regionally, and internationally as the fast hand canceling postman. This is no joke. He was faster than the hand canceling machine, which still earned him a scholarship from the Universal Postal Union, where he performed so well that he was given the job on his return to be in charge of the vault, which stored all the cash for the further running of the general and district post offices. Also, postal stamps, postal orders, first day cover, etc., etc., etc. And no one dared to go to that vault. He was like a policeman to it. St. Vincent didn't give me the opportunity.
Lawrence.
Where would Barbados have seen me? I am not accepting this offer. I'm sorry. I missed a page. Sorry about that. I have gained much from him, and as a result, became the first philatelic clerk in SVG. This was what Ms. Maloney was saying. It is time to say that a prophet has no honor in his own land. I say this because of his hard work. St. Vincent was rated the second best in the world for sorting, dispatching, and hand canceling mails. During 6 months of each year, peak time, September to February, every letter, postcard, and newspaper had to be counted and put in packages of 100 for statistical purposes, while supervised by this dear man. He was a selfless person, and he did not take the praise for himself, but ensured the other 2 postmen, quote, Aubrey Edwards and George Cupid, receive some of the praise. And in so doing, they too receive scholarships from the Universal Postal Union. When it came to devotion to duties, Doppy, those two men and myself work hand in hand every single day of the week. We work hard and we played hard, as every Sunday. After church and work, we end up socializing. For us, God was also for us, so no work at the General Post Office before attending church. Barbados offered Doppy a job on his return from the Universal Postal Union for twice as much as his salary, and his words to me were, "Nins, if St. Vincent didn't give me the opportunity, where would Barbados have seen them?" I am not accepting the offer. What do you think? I replied, "You are perfectly right." However, they did not stop there. They made sure second him for a 3-month stay in Barbados. I said to him, "They are only after you, for your experience. But go with God." I continued, "Tell me something. When you take your little drink, I notice you put some Angostura bitters. What is that made of?" He shared the recipe and added, "I don't know the secret, for they don't share that." "Ah," I said. "Well, when you go there, your work secret is yours." He said, "I don't think of that. Good advice. When wise men talk, foolish men must listen. I will do it as you say." That's the relationship we had. Doppy, the churchman, was extremely strong in his belief and was a faithful Christian. Every Lenten season, he gave up smoking. Not only smoking, drinking too. As that was his strongest vice. So one year I said to him, "But Doppy, every year for 40 days you gave up smoking, never breaking it. See if you can do that. Don't you think you can do that for the rest of your life?" He smiled. I continued, "Man, every time you feel like a cigarette, suck a mint." So I bought some mints, and every time I saw him lighting up a cigarette, I said, "Give me that."
Who wrote it?
Sorry. "Give me that one." Took it away and handed him a mint, which he took and replied, "Okay, mother dear," and that helped him to stop smoking completely. I am thankful to God to have known Doppy, also for the lives he has touched. You have blessed us with your presence, and I know you have prepared yourself to meet your God. He was ready for you, and we have not choose but to let you go. You will be missed by your loved ones, but never forgotten. So sleep on and take your rest. Rest eternal grant unto him, O Lord, and let perpetual light shine upon him. Rest in peace, Doppy. Love, Nina. God bless. Thank you.
That was written by Nina Mulonley, read by Silbert Dove, Liverpool, son of Lawrence Dopwell. Now, so next we're going to have the reception of the body. It is coming to you live from the St. George's Cathedral. a Thanksgiving service in celebration of the life of Lawrence Leonard Dopwell. 25th, born on the 25th of September 1923, and died on the 30th of April 2019. Officiating is the
Jesus
very
said,
Reverend
I am the resurrection
Samuel Nichols,
and I am the life.
Dean and the
He
Rector.
who believes in me, though he die, yet shall he live. And whoever lives and believes in me shall never die. The steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His compassion never fails. Every morning they are renewed. Jesus said, let not your hearts be troubled. Believe in God, believe also in me. I am sure that neither death, nor life, nor angels, nor principalities, nor powers, nor things present, nor things to come, nor height, nor depth, nor anything else in all creation will be able to separate us from the love of God in Christ Jesus our Lord. If we live to the Lord, and if we die to the Lord. So then, whether we live or whether we die, we are the Lord's. For to this end, Christ died and lived again, that he might be Lord both of the dead and of the living. We brought nothing into this world, and we take nothing out. The Lord gives, and the Lord takes away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. The eternal God is our refuge, and underneath are the everlasting arms.
.536. O Master, let me
Nice
walk
radio.
with thee.
Yeah, Success Radio.
Good evening, church. I wanted to choose a line, but this afternoon I thought it was from my brother, and I thought it was from Breakaway. So I'll say, glad to have you. Don't expect me to do any crying this afternoon, because one of my brothers said when they were small, they did all the crying. It was Randy and Leo. So they didn't leave any tears for me. So you can see the difference between us. So there won't be no crying. Thank you. Lawrence Leonard Dopwell was born on the 25th of September 1923 to Enid Tati Knights and Willie William Dopwell. Dad attended the Anglican school during his school days. He was very athletic, as you heard so many attest to that early on, and played such sports as football, cricket, and later he pole vault. Once he completed his studies, he became a tailor apprentice with his dad. But this trade was short-lived. When he was employed by the government at the General Post Office. He excelled as a civil servant and post officer, where he rose in the rank from postmaster to senior postman and finally inspector of postman, a position created especially for him. Of his excellent training and commitment to the job, he held this position until his retirement in 1979. On August 18, 1951, Lawrence married Sylvia Horn, who remained his partner in life until her passing on the 11th of October, 2003. They practiced a blend of good family. Lawrence was father to 12 children, son Randy, better known as Randy D, Philip, Leopold, Tony, Nigel, and Seabird, a.k.a. Dove, and daughters Gayleen, Merlene, Donna, Rosemary, Rosamond, and Arlette. A true advocate for the importance of family. Dad will isolate special time at holidays to accompany his children to the beach and sporting events. He encouraged his children to be committed and to work diligently to whatever activities they were pursuing. I want to believe that because Dad was exposed to excellent training on his job, he provided much support when someone or us search his excellence. As we move on in life to places such as the UK, the United States, Canada, to pursue our dream, he was also a permanent and very good disciplinarian, as you heard early on from Renrick, and did not spare the rod, which some of us would attest to, and most of our cousins like Dexy, Renrick, and such would attest to, because they know how he did use the rod. Making sure to understand the difference between right and wrong. Some of our cousins, as I expressed early on, attest to that. Just as Dad was a very committed worker on the job, he was also a very committed person. While enjoying social activities, you may want to say he worked hard and played hard. He was surrounded with a pool of friends that mirror each other's. They work hard, they laugh loud, they hit the domino tables with a commanding spirit, and when there were music, you could see that foot moving from side to side. The man and his church. And I stop here for a minute because I heard the men fellowship singing a while ago, and I know Dad was in the men fellowship. And if Dad was singing here tonight, you could hear his voice as far as the Catholic Church and beyond, because he took that command in what he's doing. Many Sunday mornings, I come to church with Dad, and within me I feel embarrassed, because as the church service go on, Dad would top everybody. You could hear from the top of his car, and I would be bending my head because, you know, it wasn't something I really expected and appreciated. But then you'd hear other members saying, allow him to do it. And as my sister attests to that, she said she was in church last Sunday, and a lady turned to her and she said, my sympathy, we would miss his singing. And definitely the Anglican Church would do so. The man and his church, that was also a church attendant. And his younger years may have missed a Sunday or two for non-health reasons. That can, however, not be said of his senior years. Church was a must every Sunday as long as he is healthy. He was very committed to his faith in God and the congregation at the Anglican Church. Was one of his way of showing that faith. Even in his latter years, when he became blind, as long as he had a support, going to church was always an importance to him. And one of the most rewarding moments of him was the greeting of the peace and the kind words of the congregation that many of us, members of the Anglican Church, will greet each other every Sunday morning and say to him, he appreciated that very well. On this day, the 9th of May, 2019, the Dopwell family give God thanks for the long and faithful life of Lawrence Leonard Dopwell. More important, we give thanks for the ability to care for him in his latter days, and for the friends and family that have traveled from far and near to celebrate his life and legacy. Death is not real when one has done his life works well. Lawrence has surely done so. Rest well, Daddy, until we meet again. Before I leave, both of them. And today I stand proud and very, very proud of her. Yes, there was support from each and every one of the other siblings in some way or the other, but she was the one when he could not sleep. She was the one there when he needed something to eat. She was the one there when he was crying for his pain. And Rosie, today, I leave you in God's hands because you did your best and we appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, that was the eulogy read by Philip Dopwell, the son of Lawrence Dopwell. Join us is a Success Radio out of Canada, Concordia Radio out of Canada, and Fun City Radio out of New York City. Coming to you live from St. George's Cathedral. Thanksgiving service in celebration of the life of Lawrence Leonard Dopwell.
And this is one of the things that set him apart from other gods held up by other religions. The story is told of a discussion at a comparative religious conference where the wise and scholarly were in a spirited debate about what is unique about Christianity. Someone suggested what set Christianity apart from other religions was the concept of the incarnation, the idea that God became man. But someone quickly said, well, actually, other faiths believe that God appears in human form. Another suggestion was offered. What about resurrection? They believe that death is not the final word, that the tomb was found empty. Someone slowly shook his head. Other religions have accounts of people returning from the dead. Then, as the story is told, C.S. Lewis walked into the room early for his presentation. He sat down and took in the conversation, which had by now evolved into a fierce debate. Finally, during a lull, he spoke, saying, "What is all this ruckus about?" Everyone turned in his direction. Trying to explain themselves, they said, "We are debating what is unique about Christianity." "Oh, that is easy," said C.S. Lewis. "It's grace." The room fell silent. Lewis continued that Christianity uniquely claims God's love comes free of charge, no strings attached. No other religion makes that claim. After a moment, someone commented that Lewis had a point. Buddhists, for example, follow an eightfold path to enlightenment. It's not a free ride. Hindu believe in karma, that your actions continually affect the way the world will treat you. That there is nothing that comes to you not set in motion by your actions. Someone else observed, the Jewish code of law implies God has requirements for people to be acceptable to him. And in Islam, God is a God of judgment, not a God of love. You will have to appease him. At the end of the discussion, everyone concluded that Lewis had a point. Only Christianity dares to proclaim God's love unconditionally. Only Christianity can speak of an unconditional love that we call grace. Christians boldly proclaim that grace really has precious little to do with us, our inner resolve, our lack of inner resolve. Rather, grace is all about God, and God freely giving us the gifts of forgiveness, mercy, and love. So God's love is unconditional. One writer said, "There is nothing we can do to make God love us more. And there is nothing we can do to make God love us less." A father's love for his children. We reflect on the life and times of Lawrence Dopwell, who gave his all for family. And in that respect, he points and reflects the love of God. But we also must recognize that God's love is non-judgmental. In sending his Son among us, God's goal was not to condemn us or to show us how bad we are, how unworthy we are, how hopeless we are. God's only desire in sending his Son was to show us his love and draw us into that love. A love that reflects who he is. And so Jesus did not come into the world to rebuke us. He came to rescue us. He did not come to criticize us. He came to cleanse us. He did not come to punish us. He came to pardon us. He did not come to destroy us. He came to deliver us. But here is where the disciplinary aspect of Lawrence's life comes in. The serious aspects of his life. The fact that God sent his Son not to condemn us does not mean that God is not a God of judgment. For there's a huge difference between recognizing right and wrong and being judgmental. There is a difference between judging the unrepentant sinner and being judgmental. Being judgmental means that one has a critical spirit that looks only for the bad in people and then is quick to condemn them when it is found. On the other hand, we recognize that we have free will and we can choose for good or ill. And so in that regard, God in Christ does not wish for anyone to be eternally separated from him. It is his last resort. But it happens if we refuse to accept his offer of forgiveness. Another way of looking at it is that it is not so much that God separates us from him for all eternity, as that we choose to be separated from him over against to being with him for all eternity. We can choose. He has given us that space, but he reminds us that every action have consequences. And so while it was good to go to pasture and play and borrow some mangoes from another person's tree, and in youth that is all filled with excitement and daring, there are those who would have to pull us back and remind us that there is right and there is wrong. Years ago, the story is told of a young man who had quarreled with his father and as a result left home. But he continued to keep in touch with his mother and wanted very badly to come home one year for Christmas. But he was afraid his father would not allow him. His mother wrote to him and urged him to come home, but he did not feel he could until his father had forgiven him. Finally, there was no more time for any letters. His mother wrote and said she would talk with the father, and if he had forgiven him, she would tie a white piece of cloth on the tree, which grew right outside their home, which he could see from a distance. If there was no white cloth, it would be better if he did not come in. So the young man started home. And as he drew near his home, he was so nervous, he said to his friend who was traveling with him, "I cannot bear to look. Sit in my place and look out the window. I will tell you what the tree looks like, and you will tell me whether there is a white cloth on it or not." So his friend changed place with him and looked out the window. After a bit, the friend said, "Yes, I see the tree." The son asked, "Is there a white cloth tied to it?" For a moment, the friend did not say anything. Then he turned with a gentle smile. "There's a white cloth tied to every limb of the tree."